Today we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about King Solomon's business principles. And King Solomon, obviously biblical figure, was at one time the richest man in the world. And so we're going to be talking about his kingdom and his business principles, how he became the richest man in the world, and the principles that he used, and apply that to your chiropractic practice. So these principles this morning we're going to talk about are very timeless. They apply to any business, but we're going to specifically put them into a context of building your chiropractic practice, serving people, and becoming the chiropractor, becoming the doctor in your community that everybody wants to see because you are so well known and have such a presence in your community. So the really cool thing about King Solomon is that he was he was the richest man in the world at one point biblically, and he was known for his wisdom and his wealth and his leadership. He had a tremendous influence on his colleagues. So other kings came to him for advice. And what's really kind of cool is that he wrote actually a thousand proverbs. And here's one of the proverbs that King Solomon wrote out of the Bible. Proverbs 21:5. He said, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Well, what he did is when he wrote these thousand proverbs, it was almost like putting out tremendous number of Facebook and Instagram posts. He became so well known. And keep in mind, these were before the days of internet or even newspapers. Messengers took his messages to different parts of the world and shared them with other kings and other well-known people. And all of these kings and queens and well-known people wanted to learn from King Solomon, from his wisdom. Well, how did he get that way? Well, King Solomon prayed a prayer. He's a very godly man, and he prayed a prayer to God, and I'm going to paraphrase it. And he said, "Lord," he said, "help me become the person that you need to be to love you more and serve the people at the highest level." And he prayed that prayer and did everything in his power to try to please God and serve people. And it took a long time, and it took a lot of intestinal fortitude. It took a lot of diligence. It took a relentless attitude to say, I am here on this earth to please God and serve people. And in that time, he gave to God 1,000 burnt offerings. 1,000 burnt offerings. So what's a burnt offering? Well, an offering is something of value that you give to God. It's something that you value, that has value. And what you do is you burn it so it's completely unusable to anybody, and you offer it to God. So it could be, it could be livestock that you would feed your family with. It could be some possession that you have of value, and you completely destroy it in an effort to give that. It's a sign to give your life to God. And he did this 1,000 times, burnt offerings, and he prayed this prayer on a daily basis. So God took him under his wing biblically and said, "Okay, Solomon, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you wisdom. I'm going to give you wealth, and I'm going to make you the King of Kings." And so Solomon gained that notoriety and gained that position, but it was only because he totally committed his life to that. So what's really cool is that there were kings and queens that used to come and see him. And now here's an interesting story in the Bible. The Queen of Sheba actually comes to Solomon. So Solomon created this business principle, and God said, "I don't want you to give your knowledge away. I don't want you to give your influence to anybody. You're going to sell it, and you're going to become richer and richer as a result of that." So King Solomon created this business model, and kings and queens would come to see him and pay him generous amounts of money for his wisdom. So it actually says in the Bible, and to put this in context, the Queen of Sheba came to King Solomon and paid him 120 talents for his knowledge to coach her. And when you put that in perspective, think about this. So a talent of gold is measured at around 70 pounds. One talent, 70 pounds. So at the current price of gold, which is, what is it, $2,400, $2,500 an ounce, and there's 16 ounces in a pound, and there's now 70 pounds in a talent, and she gave him 120 talents. to coach her. When you do the math, the equivalent of that in today's gold prices is around $253 million. That's what she paid him. And not only did she pay him that on a one-time fee, she paid him that annually. It actually says in the Bible that on a yearly basis, King Solomon would collect about 666 talents of gold from all the kings and all the queens that came to see him. An enormous, that was billions, the equivalent of billions of dollars yearly to coach them and influence them in the way. Now, how did he do that? What type of knowledge did he give him? Well, here's some of King Solomon's business principles that you can literally take to the bank. And if you start to apply these principles are timeless. They work in any single business, and they will absolutely bring your practice to the next level. So what's principle number one? Well, principle number one says, wisdom is understanding. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, gain understanding. That's from Proverbs 4, verse 7. The application, it says, be coachable. Get to the point where you are hungry to learn. And being coachable means to do things without a filter, to understand principles without a filter. In other words, when we become coachable, what we do is we stop interpreting the mentorship and the coachability in our own way. We remove the filter of that, because so many people, and I've seen this in chiropractic so often, is that they become coachable, but what they do is they filter that influence, they filter that message, they filter the instruction that they receive from a coach, and they filter it in their own mentality, or their own, they put their own filter on it. So they do things in a way that appeases them personally. They don't become completely coachable. It's filtered coaching, if you will. And what happens is they get a filtered result. They don't get the full result of that coachability. What principle number one says is that it says, be completely vulnerable, because you only gain wisdom when you become fully 100% coachable. Be open-minded. So allow yourself the opportunity to fail. Allow yourself the opportunity to fail, and what happens is you'll gain the opportunity to succeed. There was a couple, I remember years ago, that joined the coaching program, and they had this theory called the moldy basement theory. They got to the point where they said they were going to adopt everything that they were taught, because they were doing things in their practice a very different way, and they were going to adopt everything that they were taught without filter. They were just going to put everything in place, and they said they didn't care about the results. They just knew that other people and the coaches that were delivering this message and teaching them the principles and teaching them the how-tos of how to put these things in their practice, so the result that they wanted to get would be there in the long run. They said, we're not going to filter it. We're just going to do it exactly the way we want it. And we don't care if we have to go back to the moldy basement that they lived in when they were first married, because they had no money. They had this moldy basement apartment. So it was the moldy basement coaching theory. And that caught on like crazy. And of course, what happened is they built an incredibly successful and profitable practice as a result of that. So think that way, in the fact that stop filtering the coachability, become completely vulnerable, don't put your own spin on things, and therefore you gain success. Principle number two, Solomon's principle number two, diligence is hard work. Here's the proverb: the hand of the diligent will rule, but the slothful will be forced to labor. That's Proverbs 12:24. In other words, hard work, perseverance, consistency, congruency, discipline, relentlessness, focus, and avoiding distraction. These are principles that we have to put into play. How many of us want to build a great practice? How many of us want to see more people, serve more people, transform more lives? But we're focused on everything else. We're focused on everything outside our practice. We're focused on our golf game. We're focused on our kids' events. And I mean, these things are important, but we need to absolutely compartmentalize. And we need to make sure that we prioritize the focus so that what we want to achieve becomes reality. Distractions are the biggest takeaway from success. So diligence and hard work is principle number two. Principle number three, integrity. We can't build any successful practice, any successful business without a sense of integrity. Your reputation is 100% related to your level of integrity. And what does integrity mean? Well, integrity means I will absolutely, you can count on the fact that I will do the things that I say I'm going to do, and you can count on the fact that I won't do the things that I say that I'm not going to do. So, better is a poor man who walks in integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. That's Proverbs 28, verse 6. Integrity is a foundational trust. And people start to read your level of integrity by the way that you act. Your actions are a sign of your integrity. And here's a big thing. If you're teaching your patients to do something that you yourself are not doing, if you're talking about a care plan that people need to be coming in a certain number of times, 3 times a week for 8 weeks, 3 times a week for 12 weeks, whatever that is, doing home care, getting a re-x-ray, but you're not doing that for your closest loved ones, your family members, your team members, your staff. You look at your staff, and I guarantee most of you will look at your staff and say, are they on care plans? Do you know that your staff is having a re-exam coming up? Do you know when your staff's next re-x-ray is? How many of your staff have actually had an initial x-ray? Are they on a regular course of chiropractic care? And I guarantee the majority of you, or maybe even all of you on some level, have a loved one that's not on a regular series of chiropractic care or a regular course of chiropractic care or a regular nutrition plan or whatever that is. Whatever you're promoting to your patients and creating such importance for them to do, your closest people in your life are not doing that. And that's a sign of unintegrity. That's a sign of disintegrity. So really start to analyze things around you in your life that are not congruent with your own integrity. And guess what happens when you put these things in place? Immediately, there's like a universal law that God says, okay, you're in line. And when you're in line, things start to fall into line all around you. So watch what happens when you start to live your life with true integrity. Start analyzing these things and look at all the incongruencies that happen. And that's a sign of unintegrity, if that's even a word. So here's the next one, number 4, the principle of strategic planning. So again, this is Solomon's principle, the principle of strategic planning. The proverb said, the plans of the diligent surely lead to abundance. Proverbs 21, verse 5. Training and planning. We need to spend as much time, in fact, if not more time, training ourselves, training our team, training our procedures, working on what happens inside the office from a period from around or outside the office. We have to work on the office more than we have to work in the office. So if we're spending all of our time working in the office, guess why our office never grows? Guess why we're always burned out? Guess why we're always frustrated? Because we're not spending the time training our team. I was talking to a couple clients this week about how chaotic it is because their team's not trained. And I said, and hard reality, guess what? Guess whose fault that is? And of course, immediately, it's our own fault. So we have to own up to the fact that everything around us that has to fall into place comes immediately from within us. So training and planning are huge. Vision casting. Your vision is the guiding light of your ship. If there is no vision, you have nowhere, you're sailing a ship in the dark, you have no clue where you're going. So get that vision straight. In fact, if you can't recite your vision statement, if it's not up on a wall in your office, if your team can't eloquently recite your vision statement, that's the guiding light for your office. So if you don't have one, create one, because that is really one of the biggest principles that will drive you. And then you can say, is what we're doing falling into this vision? And maybe you need to refine the vision, whatever it is, but you may be doing things that are not in line with your vision, and that creates a total incongruency in your office. An incongruent office cannot grow. So work on the practice more than you work in the practice. And identify, here's a big thing too, identify your ideal patient. You've got all of these great patients that are coming in and you love them. You can, in fact, you're probably thinking of them right now. There's a few people that come into your office that you wish you had a whole practice full of. They come in when they're supposed to come in. They keep their appointments. They pay in advance for their care plans. They bring their families in for care. They refer others. They come to all of your events. They bring an energy with them when they come into the office. They come in and they don't complain about their symptoms or pain. They know why they're there. They understand the principle of chiropractic. Ideal patients. If you had a whole practice full of patients like that, wouldn't life be unbelievable? That would be fantastic. So start asking them. Ask them what they see in you. What do they see in your office? Why did they start care in the first place? And start to identify these traits in people. And when you start to identify these traits in people, then you can start to market to people. You can start to talk to people about those types of principles and attract people with those types of principles into your office. And that's how you build your dream practice. You can only build your dream practice when your vision is in line, your principles are in line, you understand the ideal patient that you're looking for, and you start building your dream practice. What happens is why we get burned out as chiropractors is we start compromising our principles, we start accepting people that don't fall into our core values, and we start caring for people, and it chips away at our integrity. And when you start chipping away at your own integrity, it is a drain on your whole being. It drains your energy, it drains your passion, it drains your vision. So start identifying who the perfect patient is. Talk to them and find out why they're staying with you, why they like coming into your office, and start building on those things, building on those elements that those people will identify for you. Principle number 5, the principle of wise counsel. This is Solomon's principle of wise counsel. The proverb is, without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. So I'll say that again. Without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. What does that mean? Well, that's from Proverbs 15:22. What does that mean? Well, it means that for us to be successful, we have to surround ourselves with successful people. Why do you have to go to seminars? Well, you go to seminars absolutely to learn, but more importantly, you go to seminars to be surrounded by people who think the same way, by people with the same vision, people with the same passion as you. That's what's important. Surround yourself with people like that. There's that old adage that you become the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. That is so important in chiropractic because chiropractic is a principled profession. It is based on a philosophy. And when we start to live our practice or live our life outside of that principle, and guess what? When we start doing that, it comes from a place of fear. And it comes from a place of fear like, we need to make money. We need to pay our bills. We need to put our kids through school. We need to have a better life, whatever that is. And we start practicing outside of our principles and outside of our own core values, and that it chips away at our soul. And that's why we need to make sure that we're spending time with people who think the same way. And that is so important to fill yourself up, fill your own cup up, because when your cup is full and runneth over, it can pour into other people without draining on you. So that is the principle of wise counsel. Stay with the program. Make sure that you're hanging around with people who fill you up, who think the same way you do. That is so important. Build your network around. You can do this in your practice too. Build your network in your practice of people that love coming in. Take them out to dinner. Love them, care for them, share with them and pour into them, and therefore they will again pour into you. And that is so, so beautiful for your own personal well-being. And the last one is the principle of generosity. And that kind of falls into place of what we were just talking about. The proverb is I got to put my glasses on for this one. The generous soul will be made rich. He who waters will also be watered himself. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. That's from Proverbs 11, verse 25. So give back to your community. Be the person that can share the wealth and share the wisdom. Tithe to your community. First of all, it will build a reputation for you. It will build your own personal brand. It will show your community support, and it will build trust. But what happens when you start to do this? There's this universal law, and it's called the law of exchange. And the fact that when you start sharing your wisdom and your wealth with others, and you start giving on a bigger level to people and to things, partner with a charity. I mean, we used to do community appreciation dinners just for that reason, was to go out and serve our community and thank our community. It wasn't a means to get new patients. It was just basically to throw every 8 weeks, we would throw a wedding at the hotel, the biggest hotel in our local town, and we would bring as many people in as possible just to feed them and share knowledge with them. That was it. But guess what? As a wonderful side effect of that, there were 80, 90, 100 new patients that would come in every time from those dinners. And they would want to be in that culture because we shared our vision, we shared our love, we shared our generosity with people, and it gave back as a result of that. So it was a beautiful way to do. So start partnering with charities, start partnering with people that you can share your wisdom and wealth with without the thought of gaining anything in return. And just you just wait and see what happens. There's this universal law that will come back and share that back with you. And the last principle, principle number 7, is the principle of humility. The proverb here says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. That's from Proverbs 11, verse 2. This is crucial for continuous growth and learning, to be completely humble and have humility to know that we don't know everything. Even what we do now, even though it might be working, might not be the best way. Let's go into this with a sense of hunger for knowledge, hunger for growth, hunger for learning, so that we can become the true leaders that God needs us to be. So leaders need to admit failures. A good leader needs to admit their failure and their mistakes and be willing to learn from others. That is a true sense of humility, vulnerability, transparency. So transparency increases your following. When people see that you are transparent, when people see that you have humility, they will want to be in your presence. It's just a sense of non-threatening. It's a sense of welcoming. And that's what happens. That's how you build a big practice. So those 7 principles are huge. Let's just summarize. So principle number 1 was wisdom, gain wisdom. Number 2, diligence and hard work. Number 3, integrity. Number 4, strategic planning and making sure that you're working on your practice more than in your practice. Number 5 is wise counsel. So in other words, have the sense of community, have the sense of being part of something bigger. Number 6 is generosity. And number 7 is humility. When you start to incorporate these principles into your daily practice, you will gain the wisdom and the influence that King Solomon had over kings. There's the King Solomon business model. It's consult the contemporaries. You have a whole community of patients that want to come in and see you. In fact, there's people that haven't even met you yet that are looking for you. They're looking for somebody with a vision. They're looking for somebody with principles that we have in chiropractic. They just need to know you exist. So there's people that want to be in your presence. But when you start working with these King Solomon principles, you gain this community. And then you charge a premium price for it, like King Solomon did. It's valuable. People want what you have, and they're willing to pay for it. And then guess what he did? He got them on recurring revenue streams. So what an incredible business model. Take the King Solomon business model, use those principles, go build your practice. There's people that need you, people that are wanting your service. Love you guys. Have a great day today.